The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Ontario was the last province to sign on to the federal $10 a day childcare plan. Tonight, I check in why parents and providers are still waiting. Then, what's driving a rise in the incidence of myopia in children? We'll look into that. It's Thursday, October 6th, and that's tonight on The Agenda. Accessible and affordable childcare. That is the goal of a national program that's being rolled out in every jurisdiction in Canada. But in this province, parents and childcare centers are still trying to figure out what's going to happen here. With us for more in Sudbury, Ontario, Tracy Saikowski, Executive Director of Discovery Early Learning and Care. In Vaughan, Ontario, Naila Saeed, CEO of Early Years Education System Childcare, known as EYES. And here in our studio, Priska Sebaratnam, peer parent from the neighborhood group Childcare Centers. Cassidy Comden, a private daycare provider, and Brendan Kennedy, reporter with the Toronto Star's investigations team. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
So lots to get into with this program. But before we start the discussion, I just want to remind everyone what the Ontario government has committed to with the federal government's plan for $10 a day daycare. One, reduce childcare fees by an average of 25% for children under the age of 6, retroactive to April 1st, 2022. By the end of December 2022, further reduce childcare fees by 50% on average. By September 2025, lower licensed childcare fees to an average of $10 per day. Before we get into the discussion itself, we heard the term licensed, and throughout our discussion, we'll use other terms like unlicensed, nonprofit, and for-profit. Tracy, I was hoping you could get us started here. What types of daycare are now available in Ontario?
In Ontario, there's a wide range of patchwork of services of unlicensed home providers, licensed home providers, for-profit childcare operators, not-for-profit childcare operators, some that operate in schools, some that are standalone programs. So there's quite a bit of services that are available to families.
Do you think, not to put you on the spot or anything, do you think that, when we heard the news that we were going to get $10 a day daycare, but maybe we didn't realize how complicated it is, that space of daycare? There's so much different types of daycare.
I was thrilled, and my colleagues who've been advocating across the country for many, many years, were thrilled that the agreements were finally starting to be signed across Canada. Is there work to be done? Absolutely. We need to think about how our goal at the end of the day is to have affordable, accessible, high-quality childcare services for all families and all children to be able to access.
Naila, I saw you nodding to my question. I am guessing you have a different opinion?
Definitely the program that they are trying to implement here, it is no doubt a good starter for a community that to accommodate everybody to come into that quality care, and they will be able to get that benefit of $10 within these years or until 2025. They have already started reducing the 25% under this, but we have a fear now, and we have a mixed emotions here to see how they are going to accommodate for-profit, because there are a lot of the things that the nonprofit is already getting the benefit of, and under this system where they have the wage cap, there has the profit cap, and a lot of the other things in this system that we are worried about, and all our investors and all our partners and franchisees, that how it is going to actually come out.
Well, we're going to talk more about that, and we're going to bring in Brendan, who wrote a piece about this. We're going to get more into that. But Cassidy, you run an unlicensed home daycare. And I think people, when they hear unlicensed, they may think, oh, that's bad. But when they hear licensed, they think, oh, that's good. What is the difference?
So the difference is about, it's kind of obvious on the surface level. Obviously, unlicensed means I am not I am operating like independently without any direct oversight. But I think when you hear the word licensed, it brings to mind sort of images of ministry and, maybe some type of test given or something that is like a channel by which I then receive the rights to operate myself. But in Ontario, it's important to remember that licensing is not directly given to providers by the Ministry of Education.
Well, then who gives it?
Independent agencies, either for-profit or not-for-profit, but they are still third parties. So they're a middleman. It's a middleman who is licensed by the ministry and then extends their license to independent providers, who are most typically independent contractors operating underneath them. And the licensing is contingent on their continued affiliation with that private entity.
And because you're unlicensed, you don't belong.
I do
benefit
not
from this
belong
program.
to an agency, is what that means in practice.
Okay, we're going to come back to that in a little bit, but I want to bring it back to the $10 a day program. Nyla, what type of daycare is yours, and has it opted into the program?
We are for profit and also under the franchisee model. So we are the franchisor, and we have definitely opted in. Some of our centers already received that 25% base fee that we have to reimburse now to the parents. These days, our locations are busy in calculating, reimbursing the reduced fees and how it's going to be in future, the reduced rates that the 25% that the parents are going to pay upfront now. And definitely parents are excited. They are happy to receive all these reimbursement. But as an operator, as I mentioned, we are still trying to gauge how this will all map out and how it's going to impact the overall financial viability of the centers for our franchisees. I think we definitely have to wait a few more months and to see how the results is going to come up, how the fundings are going to line up, how we are going to get the support under it.
And Tracy, your daycare has opted into the program. How would you say it's going so far?
It's going amazing. The city of Sudbury in total has I have the figures right here. So we have 17 operators in the city. From those 17, 14 have already opted in. 3 others are waiting and are in the process of opting in. So our city has embraced the Canada-wide early learning and childcare system in full force. Our municipality has been so supportive with our operators to ask questions, to answer questions, to find answers to questions. So it's going really well. Families are most excited. They have received their 25% either rebate check or credit note to their child's account, depending if they're still with us or not, retroactive back to April the 1st. So we're really quite excited to be able to offer that to families. Definitely looking forward to %. And now for us to take some time and tackle the other pieces that need to be happening at the same time. Most importantly, the workforce crisis.
Priska, you're a parent.
Yes.
How old is your child?
She turned 18 months today.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah.
I love that age. Well, almost terrible twos.
She's perfect, though.
I mean, they're perfect, right? How are their parents you represent feeling about this program?
I'm actually quite surprised to hear your other panelists' comments, because as a parent, that's part of a network of childcare centers, because my baby goes to a nonprofit. That's a daycare that's run by a nonprofit. And I'm in Facebook groups with many parents. I represent a lot of the parents and bridge the gap between childcare centers and the parents. From what we've seen, no one has seen the refunds or the rebates yet, where I am in downtown Toronto. So I'm very surprised to hear this.
How does it feel to have that experience when you see other provinces and parents are receiving those rebates?
It's It's frustrating and concerning because this is something that we, parents and childcare advocates, have been fighting for and asking for and advocating for a very long time. We've finally been told that we're being given this, but there's little to no information available for parents, childcare advocates, and even the centers themselves, because a lot of the centers themselves are in the dark. They don't really understand how the program in totality, how it's going to be implemented, how long it's going to take, because they're saying that it's going to be $10 a day, but we're not actually seeing that because it's an incremental decrease over time, over a few years, and there's no information about the permanence of this program, if it's going to last throughout successive governments. Because in the past, as you know, we had we fought a lot for $15 minimum wage. We got that in January 2018, and then Doug Ford happened in June 2018 and took that away. So
It's gone back up.
Oh, well, it's gone back up now. Yeah. It took like 5 years for it to go back to past the $15 that we were promised 5 years ago, right?
Basically, there's a concern that if governments do change, this might not be in play.
That is a huge concern for parents and childcare advocates and centers themselves, because the rules are always changing. They've been changing since this has been introduced. So it's very confusing. And
Brendan, you know, you did this report, an investigation into it. This has been something that people have been advocating for a very long time, like Priska said, 50 years. What was your reporting revealed? What did your reporting reveal about how the rollout of $10 a day daycare is taking place in Ontario?
Yeah, so with my colleague, Rachel Mendelson, we started digging into this in the late summer. When we saw that the province had changed the funding guidelines for operators that are opting into the program. And they also extended the deadline at that point from September 1st to November 1st. So we noticed in these changes that they had removed a lot of the accountability measures that had been in the previous guidelines. So, for example, they removed a section on undue profits that restricted how much profit the centers opting into the program would be able to make. And they also removed restrictions on what they could use the federal funding, what they could spend it on, and a number of other regulations. So we kind of dug in on how those changes came to be and why they came to be. And what we found was that over the summer there was an organized campaign and lobbying and public relations campaign by a group of for-profits, and that these changes followed that campaign, and that the province made certain concessions to get for-profit operators on board. And now that has led them into some conflict with the federal government because the changes potentially violate the province's agreement with the federal government. The agreement itself calls for that there must be a cost control framework, and to use the language of the agreement, it says that they must ensure the sound and reasonable use of public funds. And also, a lot of nonprofit childcare advocates believe that the money is already so tight that there isn't room for profit making. But as this conversation is already showing, what this system is, or what this program is trying to do, is transform the current patchwork mixed model or mixed market model of childcare into a largely publicly funded system. And so the challenge for both the federal and provincial government is, how do you accommodate all these different kinds of players in this dramatically new and transformed system where the rules are going to be different, but you can't lose any of the spaces that you have because the expansion goals are so ambitious. So you need everyone on board, but everyone has different interests and ways that they've been running their businesses. And so, that is the challenge that both governments face.
I'm going to ask you a question, and I hope it comes out the right way, because you mentioned that one of the government was trying to fix this patchwork that's happening right now. From what's happening right now, it feels as if it's creating even more of a patchwork. And I think there's so many different levels of government that are involved, right? It's 3 different levels of government?
Yeah, in Ontario, at least, because the municipalities deliver the funding actually flows through them, and they are the system managers at the local level. So there's the federal agreement with the province, that's the overarching agreement, and then from there, the province develops its own funding rules, and then those are delivered and implemented by the municipalities. So.
And I know from, I remember trying to find daycare when my kids were little, and the waiting list, incredible waiting list, and really super expensive. And I can imagine some of the for-profits that are in existence right now were created to fill that gap. And Nyla, I want to come to you now. We know from the Star's reporting that a coalition of for-profit daycares put pressure on the government to make changes to the program. Was your daycare one of them?
Yes, that's right. And I am on the advisory board of Minister of Education, Steve Lashley. So we have been definitely putting our side of the story and how we were concerned, and we are right now. So for profit for us, the operator like us, we had a concern about the bottom line, about our investment, the invested capital in the centers that our franchisees, our partners have put in. And they are almost like $1 million project from a scratch to build it up to the entirely ready for the community. And the other areas that we are concerned, like how they are going to cover under this program the cost of the loan, mortgage interest of the investment, monthly mortgage that payment requires. It is a serious consideration for them in this new funding, how they're going to accommodate these things and how we can remain like financially stable.
Do you think it's unfair?
Sorry, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, as I mentioned before, I think a lot of for-profits are there to fill the gap that was there before, something that the government failed to do in the past. But do you think it's fair to have, a PR agency and to do this without the involvement of all the players? Shouldn't everybody be at the table to discuss this?
For sure, I totally agree, and they have quite a bit of non-for-profit representation and to represent themselves, but for profit, they have now, as they're inclined, as we heard, like they have extended from September, and it was supposed to be the end date. They had it now November, which is fast approaching. They tried to get different parties on board to hear, and as we heard from our Toronto Star investor group, that they have come to know that how they have lifted up that cap that they had it initially on the profit margin. And also a lot of the other things they're trying to talk about, and still there are some gray areas that we haven't got the clear answer, but at least they have the representation on the board to, they are hearing their concerns, they're trying to see what the concerns are and where are we coming from and what is, and because definitely the one assurance that we are getting here is they cannot fulfill the community requirement without the fair share or without having for-profit with them partnering in this CWLCC agreement. So definitely they need us to partner there and to provide that big role to properly execute and meet the need of the community here.
Okay, I want to come to Cassidy next because I can hear you. You're having a reaction here. Go ahead.
I just can't believe that we are having a serious conversation about for-profit centers' bottom lines when the majority of childcare providers in Ontario aren't even being included in the program. Like, I really can't believe that we're having a serious conversation here about the financial stability of profit-based businesses while most families who are attending home-based childcare aren't even going to be eligible for this program. That's the real conversation that needs to be had. And to sit here and sort of listen to someone fight for, well, I should be able to pay my private mortgage with public funds, while I'm sitting here caring for families who aren't going to see a dollar of this because on every level of government, home providers are largely ignored.
Because being an unlicensed daycare
has
home provider,
excluded us
you're not even
from
part
the
of the
program.
conversation.
And, we're yelling and screaming, look at us, look at us. We are caring for the majority of these families. We are the majority of the available spaces, why are we not being included in this? Why is there not being framework built to figure out how to create oversight to disperse the funds? I mean, this is a larger conversation because there obviously does need to be proper oversight to ensure that funds are used appropriately.
And it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And so obviously with unlicensed, because there's not a lot of direct oversight at this time, I'm not advocating for funds to be dispersed to individual people like myself. But what I am advocating for is for there to be an overhaul of the current system. Licensing needs to be re-examined. The government needs to stop farming it out. It needs to bring it back under its own wing, and it needs to create framework for the people who are the backbone of the childcare industry to be included.
I'm sure someone's watching this and they're thinking, if you want to be part of this $10 a day daycare program, why not just become licensed?
That's right.
I think it's really important, really important for people to understand what licensing for an individual like myself in Ontario actually looks like. If I was to become licensed, I have very limited options. Because these are private entities that dispense the licenses, it's governed by postal code typically. So in my postal code, there are two licensing agencies. One is a not-for-profit, one is a very well-known for-profit agency. In order to work for either of them, I would have to become employed as an independent contractor. And I also want to just give a clear definition of what that means. An independent contractor is not the same as an employee. I would have functionally no workers' rights. I would not be entitled to sick days, vacation, overtime, and this is really important. I, as a childcare worker, would not be entitled to a minimum wage under a licensed agency. I would not be entitled to a minimum wage. Due to the patchwork nature of the licensing system and because it's private entities, there are a variety of structures by which these agencies dispense licensing. So I'm only going to speak to the way it's done in my area, just because that's, what I know in my area. I know this is probably the most common business structure for licensing individuals. They would set my fees, and then they would absorb roughly 30% of that fee. And I would be left with the remainder of that. And I would be expected to, out of that remainder, cover 100% of my own costs: food, supplies, general overhead. Of course, running a daycare out of a home requires additional resources, electricity, things like that. And they would offer no relief for that, but they would be absorbing 30% of the set fee that they charge.
That's a lot of missing money, missing dollars.
It's a very unreasonable structure. And, I'd like to be clear, the majority of home providers in Ontario are unlicensed. If it was a fair system, if it was an equitable system, if people felt like they weren't being exploited by it, they would just get licensed. And women, and there's a lot of them, in the face of being excluded from this program, would rather shut down than join an agency.
Well, that's not something you want to hear. Earlier today, we received a letter from 4 provincial and national childcare organizations, including Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare, the Association of Early Childhood Educators Ontario, Childcare Now, Canada's Childcare Advocacy Association, and the Childcare Resource and Research Unit. The letter reads in part, "We are writing to express concerns about the direction and approach of the rollout of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Plan in Ontario. The province's implementation has been halting and shambolic since the signing of the Canada-Ontario Agreement in March 2022, creating confusion and uncertainty for parents, childcare staff, service providers, and municipal partners. The province has also failed to follow through on commitments to community engagement, transparency, and accountability." So Tracy, what did you think I want to go back to Nyla, but I also want to talk to you about this letter and what the concerns are. But what did you think when you heard for-profits were putting pressure on the Ontario government to change the agreement?
They did. And so at this, instead of September the 1st, it was an extension to opt in up until November the 1st. So their voice was heard. The government bent the rules and adjusted the guidelines. But at the end of the day, this is public funding. It's taxpayers' dollars. And I just want to see accountability. So with this new guideline adjustment, The for-profit doesn't have to submit audited financial statements. It's important. These are public dollars. We should know where the funding is going. So we need to continue to work with the government and say, okay, but and what else can we do to make those changes? If I could just speak to Cassidy as well and to Nyla, every community has come on and had a different first day of readiness to implement the program. So Sudbury is not a very large. We were one of the first communities out the gate to get the running, and that's why we have buy-in, and most of the organizations were able to refund families before September the 1st. There is one community that I just heard in that received their opting in letters just yesterday. So they have until the end of the year to get their funds out to their families. But the guidelines were very specific that once you sign the opting in agreement, that you had 20 days to refund families, and other processes that needed to be completed. So for an operator, it's very clear. But for a family who hasn't received those funds, I encourage them to talk to their provider to say why not and when. And could you please open those doors to communication a little bit further? You might have saw me do a little wave a minute ago. Our licensing program advisor from the Ministry of Education Early Years Division has just walked in to license my program right here. So the licensing could be and looks a little bit different for a licensed home provider agency, but for a licensed childcare provider, for-profit or not-for-profit, has the same guidance documents, the Child Care and Early Years Act, that needs to be implemented and oversight by the Ministry of Education at least annually, and they come in and do 2 spots. So the accountability for licensing is our reporting is immense, and that's good because I'm using public dollars, and families deserve to have high quality, transparent childcare, and to know that when they leave their children in a space, it's a safe space. We've heard horror stories about unlicensed programs, and you might have heard horror stories about a licensed program, but it's about accountability and how and what families and children deserve, and our teams. Um, two, two licensed home provider agencies that overview licensed homes in Ontario, I'm very familiar with. And the additional supports that those agencies provide to their home providers are amazing. Our city here, our municipality, also support financially the transformation from unlicensed to a licensed home. So please speak to your municipality. Consider moving to a licensed system.
Well, Tracy, I want to move on a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe you can have a conversation with Cassidy because I saw Cassidy shaking her head. Priska, you're hearing all of this. You're a parent. All you want to do is get a spot for your child. But we also live in an environment where these jobs are mostly held by women who obviously should deserve to be paid well. You hear all this that's happening. You think why?
As a parent, there's 2 things that I want to touch on that was brought up. First, Tracy had mentioned that parents should talk to our childcare providers about opting in. But a lot of childcare providers have opted in. They've requested to opt in, but they're waiting for approval. For example, in Toronto, we have to, childcare providers have to wait for the municipal government to approve their opt-in. So until that happens, there's no refunds being, it's not put into effect yet because they have to be approved. Then there's that, the refund schedule that they have to follow, the incremental refunds, right? So that's one thing that I want to touch on. The other thing was what Cassidy mentioned about how many child care providers are being left out of this. But a very major concern for parents is how many parents are left out of this, because this plan only applies to parents with children under 6. So what does that mean for us parents? Does that mean that our childcare needs suddenly disappear once our child turns 7? Why are we not eligible for like parents who are, you know, who have children over the age of 6 until 12 or older? Are we can't qualify for $10 a day because our child's no longer?
I think the assumption is that you would be going to school.
I mean, are you going to leave a 7-year-old by themselves? I don't think any parent would leave a 7-year-old by themselves to their own devices, like after school time until they're able to come home from work or wherever they are, right? So our childcare needs far exceed longer than this age limit that they're imposing, and it doesn't make any sense. And that's a really big problem.
We reached out to the Ministry of Education to have Minister Stephen Lecce on the program. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it, but they did send a statement. It reads, "Our government's plan will save hardworking parents on average $6,000 this year and $12,000 by next year, putting money directly back into parents' pockets. We delivered a deal that reduces costs, protects parental choice, creates 86,000 more childcare spaces, and provides Ontario parents with the largest array of supports to raise a child, including by maintaining the Ontario Childcare Tax Credit." And that was a statement from Minister Lecce. Brendan, how do the feds feel about Ontario making changes to this agreement?
Yeah, so in the course of our reporting, we obtained a letter from Karina Gould, the minister responsible for childcare federally, that she sent to Minister Lecce, expressing her concern about these changes to the funding guidelines. At this point, they haven't done anything drastic. You know, the agreement allows them to impose financial penalties to withhold a certain amount of the federal funding. You know, if Ontario doesn't implement a cost control framework, they haven't taken that step yet. They've just done this step where they're kind of putting them on notice. And the province is still in the process right now of developing the funding rules for 2023 and beyond. So what's happening, right, like the funding guidelines that were changed were just for this year. It's just kind of a transition year.
But the feds already gave money to the province, right?
Yes, for this year, yeah. And I think what the federal government was doing and what Minister Gould was doing with that letter was saying, we're watching. And, you know, that if these changes to the funding guidelines persist beyond this year, you know, there might be more of a drastic action taken.
Does that mean that they'll give less money or they'll stop the program? Because I'm sure a lot of daycare owners and even parents are concerned about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. I mean, I think what Minister Gould's letter to Minister Lecce asked for was an explanation about why these changes came to be and what their plans are going forward. And they asked to be consulted on any kind of future similar changes. So I think that's just kind of the first step to say that we're watching closely, but what happens next, I think, remains to be seen.
Nyla, for-profit daycares, I think, make up 30% in this province. Moving forward, moving forward, just hearing what might happen to the program, do you worry that this might actually make the program crumble, what for-profits are asking for?
Somewhat, yes, because a lot of the thing is it still doesn't align with the system. And as we heard Tracy as well, like I understand there is the taxpayers' money and we have to be mindful where they're spending it and where these government stand is and how they are collaborating with this agreement with the federal. But there has to be they need to synchronize this system for both the parties, like for profit and non-for-profit, because they both are subjected to the same monitoring, same compliances, quality assurances under the same regulation of the Child Care Act. So why there's such a big gap between for-profit and non-for-profit? And specifically, if I have to bring it right now on the table, in terms of the wages, the minimum wages of the REC, it is very good that under this system, they are a minimum wage floor of the REC, and annual increment is a step that they are taking in the right direction under this CWELCC. But however, for profits, we are still struggling to retain these staff as under the non-profit centers, because for profit are able to give average like 3 to 4 per hour more than the profit centers. this is one of the biggest challenges right now we are facing, that when we have these ECAs freshly graduated, they join us, and once they get experience, they move forward and they try to get the positions under the non-profit organizations because they're getting the higher compensation over there. So there
Nyla, I just want to move on a little bit. We only have a few minutes left, and I want to get Cassidy in.
So that has to be same for both.
Cassidy, what would you like to see moving forward?
Tracy's mentioned the workforce crisis, and she's encouraged me to seek out licensing. I will seek out licensing when the system is no longer as exploitive as it is. There's a workforce crisis because women are not paid fairly in this field, in for-profit centers, in not-for-profit centers, in home daycares, licensed or unlicensed. Everyone is struggling in this area, and particularly with home daycare, I would love to see the government take another look at it. I think like everything, there's a patchwork of quality when it comes to licensing. And because it is third-party entities, there is a huge variance in how well providers are treated by those individual agencies. So I know Tracy mentioned that in her area, she feels that licensed providers are treated very well. I do have to disagree with her only because I am a part of the network of these women. And if they were treated well, they would be joining. And the fact of the matter is they are not joining because they are not treated well. I'm sure there are some agencies that are fine. There are obviously licensed providers who are operating now and are happy doing it. But clearly the majority are not wanting to participate, and it can't possibly be because we're all doing something untoward and don't want to be overseen. I live in downtown Toronto. The wages that the licensed agency would offer me wouldn't feed one of my children, much less all three of them. And that's not reasonable. You can't ask me to join, and the supports are not non-existent, but minimal, in my opinion. There are limited grants and limited supports, and really what needs to happen is this system needs to stop being farmed out to a patchwork of independent parties and some government involvement, and it needs to be brought back into one cohesive, overseen project.
Tracy, I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. What else does the government need to address for daycares?
Absolutely. We are in a workforce crisis, no matter who you work for or where you work for in Ontario. We need an $18 start, as mentioned in the guide with the agreement. It is not the starting point. We have a roadmap to universal childcare in Ontario put together with the coalition and ACO, and this map states that we need to be starting wages of $25 an hour for a registered early childhood educator. We can't forget the rest of the staff that work in our programs and support everyone and the children. So you're going to hear loud and clear. October 18th is Childcare Worker ECE Appreciation Day, and the workforce crisis that we are worth more is what our focus is going to be, and looking forward to a national campaign as well that'll be coming out at the end of November. So all families deserve it, all children deserve it, and we need to work together and not close one space. We have 2 programs in Ontario that are on hold and have closed their doors right now because of workforce. So it's time that we really work with our 3 levels of government to move this forward. We are in a good spot, but we have lots of work to do, and we can definitely influence.
Well, thank you all so much. That's all the time we have today. I remember being a parent and one year paying $23,000 for daycare. So it is a big problem. And obviously, we should also mention the workers that make this industry possible. Thank you, everybody, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Myopia, also known as nearsightedness, is on the rise, dramatically so in some parts of the world, and especially happening among children. With us now on the causes and the extent to which it's going on here, optometrist Vishaka Thakra, who is owner of Vaughan Vision Center. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
It's really nice to have you here.
Thank you.
So you can tell, I'm a member of this glasses wearing group.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, and I've had glasses since I was really young. So to see it on the rise again, as a parent, I'm concerned. So can you help us understand, just give us a definition, what is myopia?
So myopia, the most basic way of describing it is nearsightedness. So that what that means is that people who are nearsighted, they can't see distance, they can see near very clearly. So if you, for example, take your glasses off, you can see up close quite well. The issue with that definition, though, it's actually changed in the last few years because of the rise of myopia. So now the newer definition actually involves the word disease in the definition, saying that it's an elongation, it's a lengthening of the eyeball, which leads to disease and, refractive error change, which is nearsightedness. So it's completely shifted in the past few years.
Why has it shifted? Why has the definition shifted?
Because myopia is on the rise in huge proportions. So if you look at Asia, for example, China, Singapore, Japan, the percentage of adults with myopia is in excess of 80%. In fact, in some countries, it's over 90%. And in Canada or the United States, the Western world in general, we're not that far behind. I mean, the estimates right now in Canada are around 40% myopia in adults. So the trend right now is completely shifting where more and more children are becoming myopic.
Why is that a concern? Because we can wear glasses, we can get contact lenses.
Yeah, so that's really the more benign way of looking at it, right? So for years we thought, okay, well, a child is myopic, we can give them glasses, we can give them contact lenses, they can see. That's great for the Western world. The issue, though, is that the more myopic or the more nearsighted a patient becomes, the higher chance there is of disease later on. So what's going on right now, and the big problem, is that younger and younger children are becoming myopic. So it used to be that 8 to 12-year-olds were nearsighted. Now we've got 5, 6, 7-year-olds becoming nearsighted. And what ends up happening is their eyeball continues to lengthen and the prescription continues to get higher through their teen years, even sometimes into their 20s. What comes with that is diseases like cataracts, myopic maculopathy, which is a type of macular degeneration, retinal detachment, glaucoma. So the prevalence of that is increasing as well. And what the fear is that in the 21st century, myopia is going to be leading to the highest cause of sight-threatening or vision-threatening disease.
And as a society, how does that impact us?
In so many ways. I mean, we can break it down from just quality of life, first of all. So people who tend to be highly nearsighted, they are more anxious around their eyes. I mean, they cannot see without their glasses. So, lower myopes, they're usually quite comfortable in their vision. In terms of society, though, when you think about the burden of healthcare and losing eyesight, people who are in that category become very fearful. And if you're thinking, I think the statistic is in 2050, 30% of patients who are myopic will have some sort of sight-threatening disease, with the older adults. And I mean, that is a huge problem. It's actually reaching epidemic proportions worldwide.
Epidemic.
Yeah.
I remember when we were younger, my sister wanted to be a pilot, but we found out she had like a lazy eye, so she couldn't do it. How would that impact certain jobs that we need to get done in our societies?
So it's similar in that sense, where a lazy eye, you have one eye that's weaker. With myopia, there's certain careers such as policing, military, RCMP, where they want vision to be strong without correction, meaning without contact lenses, without glasses. And so I used to work in a refractive surgery center where young people would come in to get surgery in order to carry on their careers. And sometimes they'd be denied because they're not good candidates. So it does impact those types of careers.
Is it genetic? Myopia?
So there are genetic components, absolutely. What we're realizing now is that the lifestyle components have even a heavier weight. So, for example, if you have two parents who are myopic, their child has a 3 times higher chance of developing myopia. But you compound that with what we have in our environment right now. So, for example, we were meant to be hunters and gatherers. We were meant to be out there looking at distance. And now that's shifted to majority of our day is here.
Gosh. Yeah, we're like
right? All the time, right? And I would argue teenagers are worse than we are that way, right? They're here all the time. And so you've got this shift where the human race was meant to look far away. Now we're looking close. We're also not spending that time outside. So in order to protect children from developing nearsightedness, they need to play. They need to be outside in the sunlight, in the air, that sort of thing. And now their playtime is here, just like you said. And so the more near work we do, we're causing that shift where our vision is getting better here and poorer far away.
I want to talk more about solutions in just a little bit, but you mentioned diseases. What diseases are associated with myopia?
So diseases that occur later on as the eyeball, because when you think about it, the eyeball lengthens with myopia. So think about a balloon stretching. And so that causes retinal problems because the retina is the back of the eye, so that can stretch, right? And that can cause retinal holes, tears, detachment, which is sight threatening. Also a type of macular degeneration called myopic maculopathy. That increases with every number you go up. So like from a 2 to a 3 and a 3 to a 4, it goes up exponentially. Diseases like cataracts as well.
Well, what are you seeing at your practice? Are you seeing an increase in myopia?
So there's a huge increase in myopia. So what I actually noticed much more is in the last 3 years since the pandemic, there has been a jump. So previously, over the past 10 years, I saw a steady increase of myopia. And then all of a sudden, after the lockdown, kids are coming in, and kids that I never thought would have been myopic before developed myopia. And so kids that I thought would be fine through these years, and my colleagues are talking about the same thing. In fact, there's studies that have shown that the percentage and prevalence of myopia has increased in the last few years.
Well, I was going to ask you, were the lockdowns part of what created this problem?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So again, when you think about the amount of device time and how that's caused behavior change. So there was an immediate behavior change, but look how much kids are using devices now relative to, like, say, 2019.
Oh, trust me, I remember being that parent. My children would never have screens. And then when the lockdowns happened, it's like, here you go.
Yeah, and it was okay. And it was acceptable in the schools. It was acceptable with parents. And then trying to reverse that, it's very, very difficult. And that's, as an optometrist, I'm trying to work with parents to reduce that screen time. And even if it's I can't change things, or, we as optometrists, we can't change things throughout the day completely, but like giving breaks, taking your eyes away from the phone, not going from computer to talking to your friends on the phone, to looking at Instagram. Those are the things that are causing this to get worse and worse, and putting breaks in between is really helpful.
Help me understand this, because I think some people might be confused, because when we're reading pretty close, right, to our faces and magazines. So is being on your computer worse than reading a book? Like, how does that, what's the difference?
So we don't know that for sure,
Yeah.
right? There's nothing to fully prove that. What we do know about devices is they're very addictive, and we tend to just stare. And if you see a child or even an adult looking at a device or a video game, we do this, right? So we're really fixated. Since I really think when it comes to reading in general, reading is great, in terms of education, but the habits around reading are different than the habits around using devices. And we're thinking that's where the trend is coming.
And then the light from the tablet or phone, right?
Well, the blue light is a little bit different. So that's different from myopia. The blue light, there is anecdotal evidence that can cause changes to the retina, but that's not fully proven. More than anything, I find at this point, blue light causes strain. It can cause changes to melatonin release, but it doesn't really at this point have an impact on myopia.
You mentioned China earlier. How much attention is this issue getting in other countries?
Well, in Asian countries, it's huge. So the government is truly recognizing that myopia is a problem. Think about, the population being 80 to 90% myopic. So
and why is that?
So I think, not just I, researchers think that there has been such a shift in focusing on academics. So genetics is part of it, but you put a child indoors on a regular basis studying and always looking here, that's where that shift's going to occur. So it's a combination between genetics and lifestyle. And so, for example, in China, I read an article where there's actually like bars in front of their near work so that they don't come too close. Because there's a difference between reading at this distance and reading at this distance.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're limiting the amount of device time in the classroom to, I think it's like 20 to 30 minutes. and even limiting the amount of device time at home. So kids are being told to study in different ways, not on the computer. And the thing is, I mean, China, it's a communist government. They can impose these kinds of changes. But I think what it shows us is that governments need to eventually take on, recognize what is happening to make little changes, even if, for example, in Canada, if our educators knew more about how to help prevent myopia, I think it could be huge with children.
Because we're moving more to learning online being part of the curriculum.
Yeah, and the thing is our projected numbers in 2050, we're going to be following China. We're expected to reach that 80% prevalence by 2050, and that's 27 years away.
Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed this. This drives our director crazy. I keep having to do this because I should be wearing progressives, but I'm too vain, so I have to go this.
No one will know if you're wearing them, though.
Do you think there's much awareness about myopia here in Canada?
No, I don't. I think in the past 5 to 6 years with optometrists, we've been doing more and more. In terms of parents, very few parents know about, they know that with myopia or nearsightedness, you can go and get glasses and contact lenses, but they don't know the repercussions of myopia, and they don't know that there are things we can do to control myopia and to lower the progression of myopia. And the thing is it's not even just parents. I mean, parents are visiting their pediatricians and GPs, and I think it would be wonderful if they could also be educated that, when a child is nearsighted, there are potential eye diseases that are related to this later on, but the optometrist can actually help reduce that progression, which is, I think, very, very important in this, in this decade.
Well, I have to admit, for me, I just thought if they need glasses, I'll just get them glasses. But there are solutions, so let's talk about them.
Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done to reduce the progression of nearsightedness?
Absolutely. So in Canada, we're very, very fortunate because we are really leading the world in offering patients options for myopia control or devices to slow down the progression. So a couple of years ago, right after the pandemic, or right after the lockdown, I should say, glasses were released. And these glasses have specific optics where kids can still see clearly, but the optics change the retinal growth or the eyeball growth, which is huge. It's great for these kids who are 5, 6, 7 years old, just entering into the space or becoming myopic. So that's hugely beneficial. So we can reduce the outcome of the number. In terms of contact lenses, there's contact lenses as well.
I'm a grown-up, and for the life of me, I cannot put on contacts. Is getting contacts with a child a good idea?
So, I mean, for medical purposes,
you have to clean them and all that.
Yeah, for medical purposes, I've been fitting babies with contact lenses. So that's another story entirely. But there's even studies that show that 8 to 12-year-olds have the same sort of success as teenagers when it comes to putting on contact lenses. But really, it's when I'm talking about contact lenses with parents, it's very much about the motivation of the child, the cleanliness of the child, and the comfort and dailies, but the comfort of the parents. So you can do it, but the child has to be in the right frame of mind to do it.
So there's dailies for children.
There's dailies. There's lots of them. And there's also drops for these types of patients. So we have so many options, and like I said, Canada leads the world in this.
Well, tell me more about some of the treatments and therapies that are available.
Sure. So I mentioned glasses. These contact lenses have specific designs as well, where a child can see distance very well, but there is a change in the optics to slow down the progression. So those are soft, often daily wear lenses. They can throw them away every day. There is another type of lens called Ortho-K, and the Ortho-K is an overnight hard lens where it actually changes the surface of the cornea, and by doing that, it projects light a different way into the eye, which also slows down the progression of myopia. Now, the cool thing with those lenses is kids wear them overnight and they can see pretty much perfectly during the day.
I love science.
I know, isn't that great? And the last type is atropine. So atropine is a certain drop used for dilation for a century. And now in a diluted form, you can use it to slow down the progression of myopia.
Are you involved in any studies looking into therapies?
I'm involved in a myopia control study. I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but I've been doing the therapies for over 10 years.
Okay.
And it's something that I've seen great benefit for my patients.
Solutions are great to have, but some of this stuff costs a lot of money. Does OHIP or insurance companies cover the cost of these expenses?
So OHIP will cover an eye exam for a child up until the age of 19. And then in terms of these therapies, the glasses and contact lenses are covered under insurance plans. It just depends what your insurance plan. Like some people have $200, some people have $500. It just depends what your plan covers. In terms of the treatment itself, it's considered a therapy, and at this point, I haven't seen any insurance companies covering it. I think as knowledge and awareness come about, that is a possibility in the future. But again, like you brought it up, the awareness is not the greatest in Canada.
It's one thing to have a solution, but I know for my kid, even just trying to get him to clean his ears, he's very sensitive with things.
Yeah.
Many kids might be reluctant to try on contact lens. What can you do to encourage them to wear them?
Well, I mean, firstly, if they're fully reluctant, glasses are the option. We can go right to glasses.
There's so many cool ones.
There's so many cool ones, and some kids come in and they just get glasses with no prescription in them because they love them so much. When it comes to contact lenses, I think it really comes down to, I often put a lens on the eye when a patient's sitting in my chair. If they are fully reluctant, then they're not ready yet. If they allow me to do it, then it's just about a matter of practicing and being in an office that really can teach them how to, take care of it, how to put them in, how to take them out, how to train the parents. And for people that don't have an eye doctor, I mean, if you go to findandeyedoctor.ca, you will be able to find eye doctors within Ontario.
Oh, that's really helpful.
Yes.
What can we do to avoid myopia in the first place? Can we?
Yes. That's the biggest question, actually. So the key is playing outside. The recommendation is that children play outside for 2 hours at least a day. So for younger kids, you have kids, younger kids, it's a lot easier, right? It becomes more difficult as they become teenagers. So before myopia onsets, it is important that they're outside. It's actually very protective. So in terms of initial recommendations, that would be mine.
People point to the effects of social media on our mental health and put pressure on the tech companies to come up with solutions to that problem. Do you think a similar thing might happen with the increase in myopia?
I think there's a possibility. I think, though, that it's first starting with government, and then secondly, with these more devices coming out, pharmaceutical companies and manufacturers are helping educate on this. I think if you get these bigger companies and bigger players involved in terms of awareness, then the tech companies need to jump in as well at some point. But I think that it all comes from awareness and having that, in a way, bigger money supporting this cause.
Dr. Takara, thank you so much for helping us understand something that is so complex and something that needs to be talked about right now. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
That is the agenda for Thursday, October 6th, 2022. Tomorrow, as we prepare for the Thanksgiving holiday this weekend, we'll connect with Ontario's agriculture sector on this year's harvest and buying local. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.